Federal government declares correctional centers red zones ahead of planned protest.
ECOWAS names former Vice President Yemi Osinbajo head of election observation in Côte d'Ivoire.
NAS promises legislation to enhance welfare of troops.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall focus on the Electoral Act amendment.
Governance is one word that is mostly on the lips of Nigerians, especially the politically aware ones. Ask different people and you will get 1,000 interpretations.
Indeed, ask different people and you get 1,000 interpretations, absolutely. And this is because the true picture of governance still seems distant, especially at the subnationals. When you look at the state of our roads, condition of schools, health care centers, and much more, it feels like we're stuck in a loop. Grand election promises with very little follow through.
Absolutely, Jumai. This boils down to leadership, and that is why intentional and targeted leadership is crucial for our nation come 2027. The stage will be set for another round of leadership at all levels. And so, in less than a year to political parties' primaries, the path for a free and fair process is in the works as National Assembly gears up to pass a new electoral act.
It is a race against time with just 2 months to conclude the process, and lawmakers are promising to get it done and dusted for an effective and improved democratic process.
Indeed, a process that would define true governance. The proposals for consideration on the table are quite encompassing. Amongst them are electoral timeline adjustment, elimination of the use of permanent voter cards, and the use of bimodal voter accreditation system for verification.
Others are tougher penalties for electoral offences and so on. The Electoral Act amendment has been a long time coming. In fact, it was again in 2022. Already the stakes are high and Nigerians are waiting with bated breath on how the Act will turn around our electoral process come 2027. So on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall unpack the dynamics, intricacies and potentials of the Electoral Act amendment. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria. I am Jumai Yusuf.
And I, George Jumai, to also welcome you. I am Ademola Adeoye. This is Good Morning Nigeria, and welcome once again to the program, the first in the week. Thank you for joining us this morning. We broadcast live on the network service of the NTA. In a moment, we'll begin with highlights of the morning news, and much later, newspaper review. Let's join Chineye Nwoye for the morning news. Good morning, Chineye.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ademola and Jumei. Good morning, Nigerians. Here is the news. The National Assembly says it will continue to promote legislations that enhance the operations and welfare of armed forces personnel. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Tajuddin Abbas, stated this at the inauguration of newly built residential quarters for the military officers in Abuja.
When welfare is a priority rather than an afterthought, the entire defense system improves. I wish to assure you of the continued support of the National Assembly. We do not take your sacrifices for granted. We honor your service. We will advocate for your welfare and will stand with you to secure the peace and stability upon which development depends.
The link road and newly constructed buildings are designed not just for convenience, but also reflects our deep understanding that operational successes begin with the welfare and morale of our troops.
The Nigerian Correctional Service has declared all correctional centers across the country red zones ahead of the planned nationwide protest calling for the release of Nnamdi Kanu this Monday, October 20, 2025. In a statement by its public relations officer, Umar Abubakar, the service warns that correctional facilities are restricted areas and advises the public to stay off to avoid security breaches and untoward incidents. The statement urges citizens to exercise caution and cooperate with security agencies to ensure peace and public safety, stressing the importance of respecting restricted areas such as correctional centers. Consignments of illicit drugs concealed in frozen snails, electrical bulbs, and female clothes bound for United States, United Kingdom, and Democratic Republic of Congo have been intercepted by operatives of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport and a courier company in Lagos. Two suspects, a UK-based public health assistant and a cargo agent linked to the attempt to export the illicit substances, have been taken into custody. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has named former Nigerian Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo, SAN, as head of its election observation mission for Cote d'Ivoire's presidential election, set for October 25, 2025. Professor Osinbajo will lead a distinguished team of West African observers to ensure a peaceful and credible electoral process. The mission, guided by the ECOWAS Supplementary Protocol on Democracy and Good Governance, will engage key stakeholders, collaborate with other observer groups, and evaluate the conduct of the polls. This deployment highlights ECOWAS' commitment to fostering peace, stability, and transparent elections across the region. President Bola Tinubu has warmly congratulated His Royal Majesty Oba of Benin, Eware II, Omonoba Nedo Uku Akbolobolo, on the 9th anniversary of his ascension to the throne. Bayo Onanuga, Special Advisor to the President on Information and Strategy, in a statement, says the President joins the government and people of Edo State, the Traditional Council, and family members in celebrating with His Royal Majesty on the occasion, which marks the Oba's nearly a decade of unrelenting service to his domain and the nation. President Tinubu commends the Oba's commitment to promoting peace, unity, and social harmony within his domain, and his support in combating societal challenges such as human trafficking and illegal migration, particularly amongst the youth. President Tinubu also applauds the Oba's strong advocacy for a cultural renaissance, the preservation of traditional values, and his efforts to repatriate African artifacts from Western countries. As the Oba of Benin marks 9 years on the throne of his ancestors, the President extols his leadership in preserving Benin's cultural heritage and passing it on to the upcoming generations. President Tinubu prays that the Almighty God will grant the Oba of Benin a longer life, good health, and more historic achievements on the throne of his ancestors. And those are the news highlights for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Jumei and Ademola after this break. This day.
From the Atlantic across the savannah to the Sahara, we rise, a land of the free, we know they tire. We dream great, our spirit is undying.
Resilient, rooted like palm tree, we sway in colors, with undying deeper. We make solutions, we ignite passion, yeah. Ethnicity is unique, we are more than just a nation.
We are Nigeria, we
I am the real Nigerian. Brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA.
When malaria knocks you down, you can be sure parasites are having a party in your system.
Welcome to our new kingdom, guys!
Comel, an effective weapon against malaria. Attacking the parasite army directly to give you express relief and get you back on your feet effectively. Comel on. Malaria gone.
TerraCube is available in beef, chicken, jollof and crayfish flavors in 50 cubes Saver Pack and 100 cubes Super Saver Pack.
TerraCube, unwrap joy, unleash taste.
For an exclusive 3x skin effect, try Nivea Men Deep powered by black carbon. For 48-hour deep moisture, a fresh skin feel, and a long-lasting masculine fragrance. Make an impact with Nivea Men Deep Impact Body Lotion. Try Nivea Men Deep Roll On for 72-hour antibacterial sweat protection.
In a world hungry for goodness, with a splash of golden Terra oil, a mom can transform a frown into a smile. Make a lunch hour a happy hour. Change no thanks into yes please. Provide care when our nearest and dearest needs it most. And resolve family feuds without blowing a whistle. Providing tasty, nourishing family meals is all that matters. The world needs moms because where there are moms, there is hope, happiness and love. Golden Terra Oil, pour pure love.
Full House Refreshment is goodness to go round. The Peak Yogurt Drink 1 liter Full House pack with more refreshment, which contains fresh cow milk. Enjoy Full House goodness filled with essential vitamin and minerals. Peak, reach for your peak.
Imagine lovely meals you can cook with these ingredients. You spend heavily, but no guarantee of a tasty meal. Not making a right choice of seasoning cube can ruin your meal, money, and confidence. For a tasty meal, do not compromise. Choose Gold.
Use Terra Gold for the rich, consistent taste your loved ones crave for. Good for soups, stews, and jollof. Terra Gold. 1 cube, endless possibilities.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Up next is Newspaper Review.
Yeah, thanks for staying with us. This is Newspaper Review. Unfortunately, our reviewer, Chukwudi Okoli Ugbaja, is stuck in traffic.
Stuck in traffic, you know. A lot of our cameramen are not here too. Civil servants will not find it easy today going to work, but I hope that the roads
I guess it's because of the planned protest and the blockage of the roads.
Yes. for security reasons, to protect us Nigerians.
So how did you come this morning?
I live close, so it's just...
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And you just walked and crossed over the road and just came into the studio. Okay, let's go to the papers. While we wait, maybe Mr. Chukwudi will make it. I'll begin with the Daily Times newspaper. In the Daily Times newspaper, above the masthead, some clarifications from the Ministry of Education. English, mathematics compulsory for all O-level candidates. That's coming from the federal government, a clarification on it. And below the headmask, IMF urges Nigeria to reallocate 1% of GDP to growth sector. Details on page 2. And Oshibajo ECOWAS election observation mission to Cote d'Ivoire. He leads that observation mission to Cote d'Ivoire. That is on page 2. Nigerians will stop seeking treatments abroad soon. That's coming from the Deputy Senate President, Barrow Jibrin. Details on page 8. How they're going to do it, we'll need to find out. And INEC issues notice of Anambra governorship election. So find it on page 2. Governor Muthwang lauds Gowon as peace builder at 91. Details on page 2. Reforms, improved security spur $8 billion energy investment. That's coming from the CBN Governor Cardoso. You find the details on page 11. Let me quickly go to the Leadership newspaper, and above the masthead of the Leadership newspaper, Zamfara government reinstates 103 sacked teachers. Details on page 18. Nigerians don't want coups, say Afenifere Middle Belt Forum. You find all the details on page 4. And below the masthead, let's focus on tackling hunger, not defections. That's coming from the Oyo State Governor, Makinde. Details on page 23. And the side piece of the picture story, government terminates Port Harcourt Aba Road contract. You want to know why? You go to page 14. Katsina, Kano, Jigawa governors forge regional alliance on power reform. You find the details on page 20. And strike, lecturers, federal government resume talks over 2009 agreement. Find all the details on page 7. And the picture story you see there, a motorist tilts while attempting to navigate a narrow and muddy section of the road at Goro area of Idiroko Expressway in Ogun State yesterday. At the bottom plate, PDP convention, Anyawu alleges forgery, petitions DSS orders. Details on page 23. And Tinubu hails ex-Punch managing director Ademola Osinibi at 70. You find the details on page 14. Mr. Ademola?
Okay, thank you, Jemai. This I have the Blueprint newspaper, and just above that nameplate, we have admission requirements, English, Maths compulsory at all level, federal government. And just below the nameplates, how late Kwara Governor CO Adebayo rejected £500,000 bribe by Ate. That's from Ate. That's page 6. CBN to withdraw 650 billion naira from system through TBS subscription. And we have Sports CAF Champions League, Mamelodi Sundown, Wallop Remo Stars 5-1. November PDP convention in sworn affidavit. Anyanwu says, my signature forged in document to INEC. I never said APC will win 30 states by 2023. Idris clarifies. Then we have free Kano protests, stay off Aso Rock, environs, police, NSCDC 1. Federal government declares correctional center red zones. MSMEs top priority contributes 50% to GDP. Shetima, Dangote urges Nigerians to patronize local products. And equity market hits new high as investors gain 1.27 trillion naira. Actually, Juma, I'm interested in the fact that the government still needs to give more clarification to these English maths compulsory.
Exactly. There's a lot of confusion around that.
Yes,
you know.
yes.
Is it, do you need to write it during your WAEC or NECO, but it is not, maths is not required for art students going to the university? We need to know about that. Parents are quite confused over that issue, and I think there should be more clarification by the Ministry of Education. And one interesting,
I think what the statement is saying is that the Director of Press and Public Relations, Folashade, said the new education does not exempt any candidate from these course subjects. That is, the subjects are compulsory, that is English and maths, but rather introduces a more inclusive and flexible approach to tertiary admission requirements. So which means that maybe for admission into tertiary institutions like universities, polytechnics and all that, you don't really need mathematics.
If you're an art student.
If you're art students. Yes. But it's a compulsory subject for students in secondary school, especially those sitting for O levels, you know, to take.
Yes, to take.
All right.
And I know one other interesting issue from the IMF that I'm interested in is urges Nigeria to reallocate 1% of GDP to growth sectors. What sectors are they that, you know, talking about here? Let's go to page 4 to see what it is they're talking about. Is it roads and all that? Because I can see that government terminates Port Harcourt Aba road contracts. You know, some of these contractors just collect mobilization money and just go home. And, you know, this has been going on for a very long time. That road is something else, really.
Yeah, it's been going on for a long time. But if there is no compromise on the side of those who are involved in, you know, giving out the contracts,
yes,
I mean, we won't have a repetition or a reoccurrence of such.
Of revocation of
because if you give someone a contract and you already paid some money, you want to ensure that that contract is, you know.
Yes, it's delivered and on time. But it has been going on for ages, and I think the minister is taking the proactive steps to ensure that, well, are they going to return the mobilization money they collected?
Yes, they will return if the job is not done.
Yes, they have to be held accountable. Well, I see that the sectors that the IMF is talking about is like productive sectors like education and infrastructure. So the spending on education, they say, have been on the decline in relation to its GDP since 2012. That is alarming. They say education is the bedrock of any society, and if there's a decline in allocation to education, then there's a serious, you know, issue here, and that it should be looked into, actually.
Yeah, then the problem in the PDP is still brewing. I mean, it's just like it's never simmered down, and with the secretary now saying that his signature is forged. So I don't know how that convention in November is going to look like.
And November is just around the corner, and the crisis keeps increasing, and the, you know, what they call it,
because
crossing carpets.
Yeah, Samuel Anyanwu is alleging that the forgery of his signature in a letter notifying the INEC of the planned convention. No,
yeah,
that's another big problem.
Well, the good news is lecturers and federal government are back on the table now. You know, to talk over the 2009 agreement. 2009 is a long time, 16 years actually, and the agreement has still not been, you know, finalized. Well, we hope that things get better. And Sokoto, talking about education too, Zamfara government reinstates 103 sacked teachers, you know, bringing them back up.
Where were they sacked in the first instance?
Why were they sacked in the first instance? That's the million-dollar question here. Let's find out why they were sacked. Maybe it was by the previous government or before this one. It said a total of 103 teachers who were removed from the state's payroll about 10 months ago have been reinstated. Well, the teachers were among 780 civil servants whose salaries were stopped in January following a statewide verification exercise. I think they were caught not because they were not, you know.
Anyway, let's talk about this free Kano protest and stay off Aso Rock and Varans police. That this is already disrupting activities, especially at these at the FCT here in Abuja.
Well, we can see from our studio here, and you know, Mr. Chukudi, I'm sure he must be so frustrated. I hope he hasn't left home yet, but if he's in that
no, he has. He's stopping traffic.
If he's in that hold up, I can imagine the nagging and the complaint, you know, and the venting. Well, I hope, you know, it gets over very soon so that people can come back, can come to work, and you
not
know,
only him,
but
what about other economic and social activities
that has
around
come
the
to a
town that will be disrupted? But anyway, I mean, protest is legal, but then when it disrupts, you know, other activities, that is when you begin to get worry. Anyway, I hope that the protests will be conducted in a very peaceful manner. All right.
The Deputy Senate President is saying that Nigerians will stop seeking treatment abroad soon. I hope so.
The what?
Nigerians will stop seeking treatment abroad.
Who said that?
Deputy Senate President.
They have to lead by example.
I hope so. I pray so. You know, even here in Nigeria now, medical expenses is so expensive. Just buying paracetamol now is like something else, more or less going for tests and all that. We hope. The health sector needs a total overhaul.
That is,
and
that is the solution to
that is the only solution to it. This government has been trying actually, but when we think about it, in the center, yes, but what about the primary health care, all that?
I guess the government is working, and it's just that the problem in the health sector is huge.
It's huge.
It requires both the federal government and also the private sector, you know, to team up and tackle the problem, challenges in the health sector. But it has to be that, look, when they restrict, especially our leaders, you know, from going abroad to seek for medical, you know, treatment. Then let's all of us stay in here and make sure that our health system is in order.
Exactly.
So.
And there's good news from the CBN governor. Reforms improve security, spur $8 billion energy investment. That's in Nigeria. But are we feeling the impact of it? Do we have constant power? You know, and all that.
Well, so far so good. The power sector seems to have
collapsed for a while.
And in our sector, we've been having like nothing less than 22 hours.
At times 24 hours without.
Well, it's a good development.
It is. And, you know, more like President Chilibo always says, more good things are coming on the way. And
there's always light at the end of the tunnel. Exactly. It's hard, the policies are tough, but if we can bear it,
we shall survive.
No pain, no gain.
Inshallah.
All right, Juma, we have to,
take a break now. When we return, our conversation will begin. Don't go away. It's on the electoral amendment.
Today's fast-paced world, staying ahead demands peak performance from our bodies.
Like never before, our bodies need an optimum supply of essential nutrients, and Supermalt supports our daily nutritional needs.
Supermalt has 20 essential vitamins, minerals, and natural extracts for overall health and wellness. One Supermalt a day gives you energy and vitality, improves your mental performance, and supports your immunity.
Guys, food is ready!
Suitable for jollof rice, stew, spaghetti, and yam portage. Cooked to impress.
Milo 3-in-1 Milky and Creamy is truly milky and contains calcium. So, no need to add milk for that rich, creamy cup, which helps to nourish your kids.
No buy am. But why? No see say this big bull bag bag of rice no get the new Big Bull holographic seal?
Not true. Introducing the Big Bull holographic seal tape, your favorite authentic Big Bull rice, 50 kg and 25 kg. Now with holographic seal tape. This is to ensure you get the premium product from Big Bull rice. Do not buy if the holographic seal tape is not on the bag or is broken. Big Bull rice. Tasty rice nourished you.
When it's bright and early, get your breakfast right. You need all the nutrients that will hold you tight. Stay in power, you find it all in Peak. Every move you make, Peak's got you all the way. And the Peak goes on.
Power on every morning with our Peak breakfast to make the most of every day. Peak. Reach for your peak.
Good, tasty food is worth living for. Worried about your oil every time you enjoy your favorite meal? Introducing Smart Balance. Smart Balance rice bran oil is rich in gamma oryzanol. Several studies suggest that gamma oryzanol may contribute to the reduction of bad cholesterol. Golden Terra Smart Balance oil. Good food, no worries.
Lagos, Port Harcourt, Abuja. The city is moving. New voices, heavy drip, all heart. From the streets to the stage, this is the next Afrobeat star.
What are we here for? Let's Afrobeat star. Let's get nasty.
And the talents from all over showed up to own the room. But they're not alone.
Spiritual. Gospel.
All chasing a slot to face the judges. Puffy T, SARS, Andre Vibes, P Pride. Catch next Afrobeat star on
Thanks for staying with us. You're still on to Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Just before we bring in our panel of discussants for our conversation on the Electoral Act amendment, let's take this background report by Timothy Yusuf.
The Electoral Act amendment is currently underway in Nigeria, with the National Assembly aiming to conclude the process by December 2025. Analysts believe that this amendment is crucial for the 2027 general elections, as it seeks to address various electoral issues and improve the democratic process. Some key proposals include electoral timeline adjustments, whereby the National Assembly proposes moving the presidential and governorship elections to November 2026, about 185 days before the expiration of the incumbent's term. This change aims to ensure sufficient time for election-related disputes to be resolved before the May 29, 2027 handover date. Voter identification is another key area. Here, the amendment suggests eliminating the use of permanent voter cards, PVCs, as a mandatory requirement instead, allowing voters to download and print their voter's card for verification purposes. The bimodal voter accreditation system, BVAS, will be used for verification. Candidate nomination is another key proposal, where only candidates from validly conducted primaries will be recognized by INEC, and rival parties can challenge nomination processes in court. Another key proposal is INEC independence, as the amendment seeks to strengthen INEC's independence by mandating early release of funds and clearer tenure protections for resident electoral commissioners. Electoral offenses is another key proposal. The proposed law imposes tougher penalties for electoral offenses, including vote buying and false result declarations. The Senate and House of Representatives committees have conducted public hearings on the Electoral Act Amendment Bill 2025, with lawmakers emphasizing the need for comprehensive reforms to ensure credible elections. Findings show that despite some setbacks and disagreements among lawmakers, the National Assembly remains committed to finalizing the amendment before December 2025. Let's now join our guest in the studio for more on the Electoral Act amendment.
Thank you so much, Timothy Yusuf, for that background report. And now joining us from Lagos via Zoom is Honorable Adebayo Balogun. He's the chairman, House Committee on Electoral Matters. He's representing Ibeju Lekki Federal Constituency in the House of Representatives. He's from Lagos State. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Good morning.
And also joining us later on, he'll be here in the studio. We hope, if the traffic doesn't stop him from coming, is Honorable Shaba Ibrahim, former member House of Representatives. We hope he'll be able to join this conversation. Sidemola.
Yeah, thank you, Juma. Also joining us for today's discussion, we already have in the studio is Faith Nwadeshi, Executive Director, Center for Transparency. Faith, you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria. Good to have you again.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Good morning, Nigerians.
All right.
Good to have you.
Thank you.
See you.
Thank you.
Okay, join us via Zoom from Yenogwa, Bayelsa State is Stanley Damabide, Esquire, former Chairman, NBA, Yenogwa Branch. Good morning, Stanley.
Morning, it's my pleasure to be with you this morning.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll begin with our guest on Zoom, Honorable Adebayo Balogun, who is the chairman of the House Committee on Electoral Matters, and that is why he's here with us. Now, let's begin with the basics. Can you briefly explain why this amendment to the Electoral Act seeks to achieve, what it seeks to achieve? And one very, very important question is why the National Assembly wants to move elections from February or March to November of the preceding year. Can you just give us what you intend to achieve with this amendment to the Electoral Act?
Yeah, once again, good morning. Well, the compilation of the amendments that we have are part of the memoranda collected from various organizations, CSOs, and private individuals to our public engagements. And the appeal had been that all litigation should be concluded before swearing in. And what the committee, the technical committee, had been able to do is to reduce the timeline of the litigation from about 240 days to about 185 days. Because if we want to achieve concluding electoral litigation before swearing in, that means the day between the election and the swearing in must be defined and must be within a period where we are sure that this process will be concluded. In the constitution, what we have presently is 180 days for tribunal and 60 days for appeal. And that means we still have 21 days for the filing of the tribunal and another 14 days for the filing of the appeal, which gives about 260 days. So looking at 260 days, we felt that that might be too much for people to stay at home after election before being sworn in. So we were able to reduce it to 90 days for the tribunal, 60 days for the appeal, and 21 days and 14 days for the filing, which gives us about 185 days. This is still work in progress. This is the position of the technical committee. There are still some inputs coming in. We know we are still going to go for the consideration and the third reading. And that's when it will be presented to the General House. It's just at the committee level, which, and you know, the committee is not even up to 10% of the total House. So it's work in progress. That's on the timeline for the election. We also have issues like early voting by essential workers. You know, as of today, essential workers like the INEC staff, security personnel, NGOs who are already usually monitor elections don't always have opportunity to vote. And these people runs into probably millions. And if that means we're actually deputizing them. So we're looking at a situation where they're going to do their voting earlier, probably 2 weeks before the general election. And you cannot do their own trade on the day of the election. Also looking at the voting by inmates, there has been a court judgment compelling INEC to register people within the correctional centers, so which we must abide by, and we are actually taking that into recognition. We discussed about the non-compulsory use of BBC in the current. What we have with the beavers now is that it's no longer the card reader that uses the microchips, that recognizes the microchips in the PVC. So we are looking at, okay, what's going to be the essence of this card if it's no longer to be read by the beavers? All what you need is probably download your temporary card from the online individually. And we also looking at the litigation period to which must also be amended in the Constitution. The timeline discussed earlier must be amended in the Constitution, and that's one of the constraints that we still have. It's a proposal by the House of Reps and the National Assembly Committee on Electoral Matters, but these provisions are actually presently in the Constitution. So what we're trying to do is to bring them out of the Constitution, put it in the Electoral Act so that they'll be to be easier to amend in future. So these are part of the highlights of what we have for now. And also we are trying to strengthen the internal democracy within the political parties. So the procedure for the primaries are well spelled out now, and the procedure for nomination generally are well spelled out. And also in the area of jurisdiction of pre-election matters, where someone can have a pre-election case and from Lagos and you now take it to Sokoto, we try to limit the jurisdiction to where the case occurred or at the High Court of FCT, so that in case there are some security challenges or some other issues that might not be convenient for the sitting to be within that state, the only option will probably be taken to the federal capital territory. So that will limit the kind of abuse that we've been witnessing. So where people deliberately just take cases to where it might not be convenient for their opponents. And the management of results too, we've been able to criminalize some activities of result management, so that whoever is found wanting will actually be there to it. And the fines of all electoral offenses has actually been increased, so that people will know that yes, the law is actually serious this time around. So these are part of some of the highlights in the amendment. And we are also, yes, this one too, we are also looking at amending the laws, guiding the conduct of local government election, because we have two options now. Is either we amend the law to make the local government election stricter and in line with the regulations of INEC, or like some people are also proposing, probably even scrap the SEC and now make it a full responsibility of INEC. But some people believe when we're really talking about the subnationals to be strengthened. It's rather we strengthen the SECs, and by making sure they have enough laws to guide them from allowing such abuses that we've been seeing in recent past, so that we can retain them or strengthen the law. So some of the amendments too have been done in the area to ensure that, okay, the procedure guiding local government election is actually improved.
Thank you very much, Honorable Balogun, for giving us the highlights of the proposed amendment to the Electoral Act. We'll come back to you, but let's return to our studio now. While you were talking, our other guest came in, Honorable Shaba. It's good to have you join us. Good morning, Nigeria.
It's my pleasure to be here. Good morning, Nigeria.
Good morning.
Okay, let me give you some time to relax. Let's come to Faith now. You have listened to Honorable Balogun highlight, some of the proposal for the amendments, and he mentioned the fact that they receive reports from centers and some committees and all that. Where your center was able to submit report, and what's your view concerning this electoral amendment?
Thank you very much. Yes, we did send in a memorandum to the committee. And there's one very important area he didn't mention, and that's my constituency, the gender constituency. There's also a provision that for party primaries, delegates should have at least 35% representation of women and youth. That's very fundamental, And also, there are some changes to areas of vote buying. It's now been increased, proposed increased to 10 million naira. 10 years, 5 million naira, 10 years if you are caught. And also the fact that as presiding officers during election, it is now mandatory that you do electronic transmission of results. And if you don't do that, there's a penalty that is also attached to that. So when you look at the proposed Electoral Act 2025, there are lots of new propositions that if it is debated, it will really go a long way in strengthening that. Now, it's also important to see, talk about why...
Which are these propositions?
So, in addition to what the Honorable mentioned, I just mentioned some new ones, especially the gender representation for political parties, and also the submission of names of candidates. In 2022, there was a provision for 150 days, but now it's been extended to about 180 days.
Okay.
That's to give the political parties time to ensure that the substitution, you see this practice of substituting names close to elections, and then you have all of this pre-election, litigations and all of that. Sometimes pre-election litigations are even decided after the election. So these are some of the innovations that have been added to the new electoral proposal that we have. Now, but there's also one other aspect. In the new law, they've also proposed to have the Electoral Offences Commission, which was not there. In the last 3 legislative cycles, we have been campaigning and advocating. In fact, there had been public hearings that we attended for the establishment of an Electoral Offences Commission, taking away the responsibility of prosecution from INEC. So it is now there. And there's also another very interesting one. In the past, it was because of INEC regulations and guidelines that you have the Electoral Security Committee, where you have INEC and the Chief of Police, sitting side by side as chairpersons. Now it is in the law. If it is passed, it will become compulsory that you have that committee in place. It was never captured in our laws, the Election Security Council, but now you have that in the law, showing that you now have a situation whereby INEC, police, NSCDC, all of the security agents, legislated, must have that committee. They have to look at election security and other logistics. The new law also now stipulates the number of days that you will bring out your logistics plan before the election. Logistics has been one of the fundamental, gaps that we have had from every election. No matter how prepared, no matter how much they plan, you go out and find that there has been a little bit of problem. So you now have that in the law to say this is what you're going to do. And interestingly, one of the areas that he mentioned that we have always campaigned or advocated for is early voting for those of us who observe election, security personnel.
Those of us who
So,
work.
yes, because if you take that population, we are over 100,000.
It's huge. It's more than
we are over 100,000. Imagine what that number can do for a winning or losing candidate. So if you make provisions for early voting, but for diaspora voting, there's a caveat. Diaspora voting is only at presidential elections. So the diasporas don't get to vote for senators, don't get to vote for House of Assembly or not, House of Reps. but they only get
for governors,
or even for governors, it's only the presidential election. That's the provision in that law. And then also the issue of accreditation of voters. You know, because of the PVC that we have, sometimes people go to the polling unit, their PVC is either defaced, they have not been able to go back, and so they are not able to get accredited. Now, the law is saying, beyond using just the PVC, INEC should come up with other digital ways of identification. For instance, a lot of people are getting used to the issue of using QR code now.
Yes.
So if there's a QR code, and there's a way you can scan that and still get the voters' data, even if the PVC is not working, the person can still vote. So in that way, you are not disenfranchising people because they don't have a PVC. So these are some of the, I would say, progressive provisions that they have made within the law that Nigerians should begin to look at. The issue of vote buying, the issue of early voting for people, the issue of inclusion, and it also weighs heavily on the political class for internal party democracy.
Yes.
Internal party democracy, all of these reforms we are talking about, if it is not imbibed by the political class, we're just talking and then it will end up as paper. Implementation is the issue. Now you have for instance, you have the issue of the National Assembly members asking for early votes instead of going to February. You know, over the years, you have seen that our election dates have kind of stabilized. I can sit down here and tell you, in 35 years, the date of the next election.
Yes.
That is something we have been able to achieve. So now, what the National Assembly is saying, let's take it back so that it can coincide with the number of days that litigation will happen. So you don't have somebody already voted in office, and then you are looking at the body language or the perfume of the person to either make a decision whether this is happening. And then fundamentally also, in determining the results for elections, you know, in the 2022 Act, it says that the IREV will be for just skipping the results. You know, now it is compulsory that you must transfer, and you can also use data or results you have posted on the IREV in court. You know, that was not allowed for the 2023 election. So if this electoral act passes now, it means that you can actually take the result that has been posted by INEC on IREV and present it in court as evidence of results that were done there. So I look at, holistically, I look at the law and say that this is quite very progressive. And it's important that we do that. But again, most importantly, the issue about funding of INEC is also taken care of there. You see, the Constitution made a provision for INEC to have first-line funding from the Consolidated Revenue Fund, meaning that every money that comes into the Federation, there are agencies that have been listed in the Constitution that should have first-line funding. Before you begin to appropriate to other ministries and agencies, these agencies are the ones that you must first of all look at their budget and give them their money. But it has not been happening, and that's why you keep hearing, oh, there's funding issue, that's
logistics.
You understand? So now this law makes it compulsory that you must release INEC funds to them. I think they gave a period of about 6 months or so, so that you don't have the issues, because INEC is mandated to release their logistics plan 6 months into the election. And you know these issues of by-elections, some of these elections that we have, and all of that, it's a lot. It's something that we really need to go sit down and look at and address. So for us, what we pointed out was that in the provision for INEC funding, it should be linked to the provision in the Constitution. Because there was no mention of that provision of the Constitution that says INEC should have first-line funding. When you link a provision in a law to the constitutional provision, it makes it stronger, you know, so that when you are implementing it, you know that you have the foundation from the Constitution and all of that. But for us, most importantly, that they have legalized two things: Electoral Offences Commission and the Election Security Committee.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have to pause you there. We'll get deeper into this conversation. Now, let's bring in, for joining us from Yenogwa, Mr. Stanley Damabide is the Esquire, former chairman, NBA Yenogwa branch. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you once again.
Okay, I've listened to two of our guests now talk about the Electoral Reform Act and amendments to it, and but we all know that there are hurdles to passing all these, reforms in the Electoral Act. So, what constitutional hurdles first must be cleared before this amendment can take effect? Just give us a breakdown of it.
Well, just like the honorable member said, what they are doing is at the committee level, because they are working on behalf of the larger assembly, the larger National Assembly. There will be need for the committee to report to the appropriate houses, if it's the committee in respect of the House of Representatives, it goes there, and then that of the Senate. And because some of these amendments might touch on, constitutional issues, you will require the requisite majority number of persons to have it passed before it will now go for the presidential accent, for it to now become an act. Basically, that is the process stipulated by the Constitution as to how this amendment can take effect.
Proposal required, does it require ratification by state assemblies, and how feasible is that before the 2027, election?
Well, since what is being amended is an act of the National Assembly and not the Constitution itself, it doesn't require passage or approval by the different states' houses of assembly. It's an act of the National Assembly, and so the powers to ensure its amendments and passage resides squarely with the National Assembly and not any other constitutional body outside of it.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Stanley, for your opening remarks there. We'll be back to you later, but let's come back to the studio where we still have Honorable Shaba Ibrahim. You've been part of the system, and we want to get your feel about this proposed Electoral Act amendment, and what are the concerns that are being raised right now concerning this proposed amendment?
Thank you very much. Once again, let me say, Benicio, that in as much as I agree that certain aspects need to be strengthened by way of legislation, I think that the most important aspect of the electoral process has been ignored. And I'm talking about the human component of the system. There is nothing that is being proposed today that will make meaning if you ignored the human element. That is the operators of the system. I ask you, you talk about INEC, you talk about constitutional provision, you talk about inserting certain things in the law to make them crystal clear. There is none of this that has been lacking in the past. It is just that people have found some ingenious way of circumventing those legislations for personal and primordial gains. I shudder to imagine. Have you ever asked yourself, why are we perpetually amending? Perpetually. Since I got to, my involvement with election petitions and electoral matters, and I'm talking about early 90s up till this moment, there is hardly any election cycle where you have the laws remaining the same. One, it does not allow for consolidation and perfection of the system. It's like each time you get into the 18-yard box, the goalpost is shifted somehow.
Because life is dynamic, so
life is
there will be changes here and there.
Life.
But you don't change goalposts.
But life may be dynamic, yes. But when you persistently change the rules without looking at the operators of the system, you miss the point. I'll ask you, quite rhetorically, the last election, INEC spent hundreds of billions on electronic transmission and what have you. And on the election day, there was a glitch. How do you explain that? do all the amendments you want to do today. If one man sits and decides to sabotage the system, everything will come to naught. So I'm more concerned about the operators of the system. We have to really profile those who take up sensitive positions in the entire system than the law itself. We have too many laws. I'll give you an instance. We're talking about electronic transmission. Who says there is no provision there now that talks about electronic transmission? I've been involved in cases where clear provisions of this constitution have been circumvented by INEC in the name of bringing out regulations that they are supposed to make pursuant to enabling provisions of the Electoral Act and the Constitution. And quite disturbingly, the courts have pronounced sometimes that those regulations either have the same powers, even if they contradict the Constitution, with constitutional provisions and so forth and so on. INEC cannot sit and make what you call executive lawmaking to circumvent clear extant provisions of the law. So what am I saying? Yes, there are certain things that look novel and helpful, but I think that the focus on the operators of the system, particularly INEC and the courts, will do us more good than that we currently experience. I'll give you an instance. There was this judgment from one of the tribunals in the Southwest, if I recall, where a judge seems to suggest that in proving your election petition, you have to bring in all the beavers machines to court. That is dreadful, with all due respect. I think it's, with all due respect to their lordships, it was clearly meant to circumvent clear and extant provisions of the law. When the law makes, the provisions of the law, when they are clear and unambiguous, you give them their ordinary meaning. But when you bring in things that the ordinary eye cannot really see, it is those on the saddle that are seeing them, then there's something ominous. And I think we need to focus on those. INEC cannot sit in the quietude of their offices and make regulations that will circumvent laws validly passed by the legislature. So we can sit down here all day, amend our laws from A to Z. You can turn it on. In fact, you can repeal the one you have and bring in a fresh one. If the operators are not, the amendment you need is for amendment we require is more relevant to the operators of the system than to the laws themselves. Okay, yes, they should amend their ways. People should amend their ways. We should more this opacity that seems to accompany even judicial pronouncements and regulations from INEC and whatever, you should not be allowed.
So
then there must
support of the Electoral Commission now. That's part of the reforms to the
Which
act
one?
itself.
The what do you call it? Election Offences Tribunal
Tribunal,
or whatever.
yes,
who says? I mean, honestly, I think it's idle. If you ask me, there are. With all due respect, I think it's idle. It's idle in the sense that all the electoral circles. Tell me which of the major infractions have been punished. As soon as the elections are over, even those who are arrested and everything, few weeks into it, everybody's let off the hook. You hardly hear anything about it. So bring on the commission if you like. In fact, bring on the military tribunals if you like to come and try them. People are not afraid of your laws. No, people are not afraid of your laws if they were certain. The only thing that prevents people from the sociological point of view that prevent people from committing crimes and infractions is the possibility of being apprehended rather than the quantum of punishment attached to those offenses. If your chances of escape is like 90%, prescribe death penalty, it will still continue. So with the point I'm making,
are you saying that the perpetrators of this act are not afraid of death?
I am saying you have death sentence for certain offenses and whatever, and they are continuing. In fact, people are committing it more because the legal regime, the law enforcement regime, is weak and it's not catching up with perpetrators. So it is not what you write in your books as the consequences of infraction that scares them. It is the possibility of the probability of being apprehended.
Yeah.
So even if you attach just 5 years,
even if they are apprehended, the sanction.
the sanctions may not even come. When you sit down, people commit all sorts of offenses, and through some administrative fiat, you hear some pronouncement that seems to suggest that they be left off the hook like we're experiencing now. I'm telling you, it's a disincentive to probity and accountability in the system. So I don't think, what I think we need, rather than this endless circle of amendments that seems to be wasting public funds, scarce resources, is to really profile those who are those who are in charge of running the system, so that they can grant us, as a student of constitutional law and what have you, the 1979 Constitution, there was nothing wrong with it. I'm just trying to take you down memory lane. There's nothing wrong with it. All we've been doing is been going in circles. When you tinker with this one, you come back to this one. Times were in the past when an ordinary voter had the local standard to present an election petition. Times were after Salisu Buhari's certificate scandal, that anybody who alleges that there has been, that any contestant has lied on oath is able to present a matter to court. And whether you are sitting there or not, the courts can make pronouncement that would invalidate your election. Why are we changing all of those provisions? It's like some of these provisions are either meant to hide certain things that the ordinary eyes cannot see. So at the risk of repeating myself, I think the amendments I think we need more desperately is amendment to the operators of the system rather than the laws themselves properly so-called.
All right. Thank you so much, Honorable Shaba Ibrahim, for that. Well, let's go back to our Honorable Balogun now, because I want you to respond to this concern that is being raised, the issue of the players, especially in the political arena. Do you have any concern? How do you respond to the issues that he has raised?
I think Honorable Shaba, I should be very objective. He's talking about amending the players, how do you amend the players? The main thing to do is to amend the laws, make the laws appropriate, make them realistic, make them less ambiguous, and these are the issues that we have been trying to do. And by the time we before we collate all these amendments, we invited the public, all stakeholders, and we expected everybody to come on board and try and put in their inputs where they felt things could be made better. So if you had gotten areas where he felt there are laws that could amend the people, they probably would have put them in. Because let's take some of the issues he discussed about, talking about reducing the powers of INEC to regulate. Probably sometimes INEC regulation supersedes the Constitution or the Electoral Act. That I believe in law, it can never happen. It's from the regulation or guidelines of INEC to the Electoral Act to the Constitution. The Constitution being the grand norm. So there is no way you go to court and you put the INEC regulation above other laws, like the Act or the Constitution. He also mentioned the issue of beavers, where someone was told to bring all the beavers machine to prove a case. You see, we have to look at the circumstance behind some of these judge rulings or so. I believe if you have a case and you claim that what is on the result sheet is different from what the beaver machine reads, because before you compile the results, the reading of the beaver's machine is also imputed into the result sheet. So that's what INEC is supposed to rely on. But for any reason you believe that wasn't the actual reading of the machine, probably that would have led to the probably the suggestion that, okay, bring the machine, let us see. Well, I can't really speak, but I'm just trying to see what would have warranted such request by the court. And for our female member on the panel, she said something about the gender bill before my line went off. I think I had that part before my line went off. Well, the gender bill is actually being handled by the Constitutional Amendment Committee. And I can tell you that it's getting good traction. And, all things being equal, it's fine. I said too, because it's still, that's going to go to the 36 states of the Federation, the Houses of Assembly. We must get to third of support from them. And from our lawyer too, from Vedegua, I think he said something about we not requiring the amendments by the State of Assembly. But for my opening speech, I said the timeline is currently in the Constitution. The timeline of the election and the electoral and the tribunal is currently in the Constitution. We have the timeline of the election in section 76, 116, 132, and 178. And we have the timeline of the tribunal, that's the litigation area in Article 285. So these two areas have to be amended, and they are also brought into the electoral so that subsequently it will not be difficult, because electoral amending timeline of the election shouldn't be so rigorous for us to do, because as it is, it must go through the normal process of constitutional amendment. But other areas are not involved. It's just that area of timeline that I mentioned that will require constitutional amendment. But I want us to really know this, that most of the time we talk about the leadership of the INEC, but we forget that on the day of election, the proper elections are carried out by the NYSC corpus. And these are the people we hardly even discuss about. During the last public hearing, I think last week, Monday, when we had our public hearing, the representative of NYSC came to for his own presentation. And at the end of the day, I realized that these are the people that we should be majorly be discussing about. And I immediately told him that after that day, we are going to give him, the committee is going to invite him specially to discuss about the issues of the corpus. He mentioned in his presentation the insecurity situation that they face. Many of his corpus have been killed over the years, and the worst part is that they get only 17,000 naira for this exercise. And we are not careful, no corp member will be ready to participate in this activity again. And if we look at it, we spend so much billions on the exercise, and the main actors, because the INEC chairman will not be on ground on the day of election. No INEC staff, no INEC permanent staff is on ground during the election proper. It is only when they start getting to the coalition level at their office that the INEC staff really get involved. So the people that can make or near the election, we hardly talk about them. And this is where I think we are going to have a major discussion now. And because if you don't make them happy, if you don't feel comfortable, that means some of them will be joining this exercise and waiting to be enticed by the political parties. And that might become the highest bidder at the end of the day.
Shawa has raised some pertinent questions, and I think he's not talking about the NYC, he's talking about the higher ups. That means judiciary, INEC officials, and the stakeholders themselves who are involved in electoral matters. And also critics have argued that rushing constitutional change and amendment to the Electoral Act so close to an election cycle, can create uncertainty among the electorate. So is their concern valid here?
We started this process since 2023 because we've been to every zone in this country, collating information, gathering their thoughts, and these are processes that you must engage everybody. We engage the justices of the appeal court to let us know what and what actually leads to some of these contradicting judgments. We've got the civil societies, we've got the political parties through IPAC, we've got all the stakeholders, CSOs, all of them. So we are trying to get enough coverage so that at the end of the day, and our target is to conclude this exercise probably by next month or early December. Like I said, some of these amendments will still require, like the one of the timeline, will require the amendment of the Constitution. So that's why we also have to delay. We could have concluded these electoral matters probably some 1-2 months ago. But since it's still going to require the amendment in the Constitution, we must slow down to ensure that before this issue of 180 days to the election could be achieved, that means the conclusion of litigation before the swearing could be achieved. That means the Constitution should have been amended in line with our suggestion. That means Section 76, 116, 132, and 178, and 285 must have been amended. So that's one of the reasons that we have to at least slow down a bit to get their own input. So, but what I'm saying is not that the higher ranks should not be disciplined if they actually offend. But if let's give it to the last INEC chairman, under his watch, some regs has been taken to court. Even I think 1 or 2 lecturers have been jailed, professors have been jailed for involving in election malpractices. So this last INEC chairman has been so wonderful, done so wonderfully well. You know, it's under his watch that Beavers was also created. Beavers, like I tell people, has been the biggest thing that has happened to our electoral process, because it is the process of accreditation that has been the most problematic, and they've been able to achieve that. Some people said the last election there was voter apathy. No, there is no voter apathy during the last election. The last election actually gave us the real votes. Most of the things we've been getting early on were manipulated votes, because now you cannot vote on my behalf by proxy. No election, no accreditation by proxy, because it's going to be your biometrics, your fingers or your iris. It cannot be duplicated. Unlike what we have doing the card reader, they will sign an incident form that, oh, it's the machine that is faulty. But with BVAS, you cannot. So let's look at the system now. Let's look at the areas where improvement can actually come and assist. And like I said, we never look at the area of NYSC, which they are the main operators of this scheme. And looking at their own area too would do a lot. Giving them adequate remuneration, their security, their welfare on the period of election is very key. And a situation where during the last election, I heard about a case of an NYC copper that was raped because she was told to do something and she refused. Many of them go through serious security challenges. I think it's in the 2011 or 2015 election. We lost a lot of coppers during that election. So these are areas that we are also saying, let's look into. I never said that well, we don't need to look at the issue of the issue, but I think we have more problem at the grassroots than even the issue.
Thank you very much, Honorable Balogun, for your contribution there. We'll be back to you. Let's come back to the studio where we still have Faith. You have listened to the various discussions so far, and the issues raised by Honorable Ibrahim here as well, that there is no actually any need for at least tweaking or overhauling the Electoral Act, and it is the people themselves that needs to be worked on. There is need for a reset, of the players. Either just like you said, one of the proposals that the politicians themselves, they need to sit up, because without them, even we can keep on making all these amendments. If they're not ready to play by the rules, it will still be difficult. Let's have your...
You're very right. After the 2023 election, we actually carried out a perception survey. And over the years, we found out that the weakest link in our electoral reform is actually the political class. They're the ones who pay thugs to come and disrupt elections. They're the ones, they know they have lost this election. They will still go to court and try to bribe judiciary and everybody along the value chain. Also, the second stakeholder that you want to look at is to look at the security. And of course, our judiciary. I agree that we should have that conversation. But people say that when you don't plan, you plan to fail. And when you have conducted an exercise, it's good to sit down and assess that exercise and find out where you have gaps and try to address as much as possible those gaps. For instance, if you read the INEC report on the 2023 election, I think they had about 100 and something amendments that they suggested, and about 80 something administrative that they will have to handle by themselves. Okay. So when you look at this Electoral Act, you will see that some of the issues, for instance, IREV, transmission of results, is now saying it has to be compulsory. Because in 2022 Electoral Act, it didn't say, they said INEC will prescribe how, if possible. So there's a loophole there that anybody that is mischievous can decide to interpret it anyway.
Just like we have now, the defection of...
Yes. Now, see, that 2023 election we're talking about, remember that at the beginning of this National Assembly, for the first time we had different political parties. I think about 6 different political parties. But now, how many do you have? All of them, if not more than 90% of them, have defected to one political party. The people went out and voted, and these results counted. And the people were put into those houses, either at the state level, at the national level. But what have we seen? They have all decamped. Is that a problem of the law?
What does the law say in the Electoral Act?
What I'm saying.
What does the law say?
No, for the issue of cross carpeting, the law has a prescription on how that should be handled. Do you understand what I'm saying? And that's why we keep saying that it is the political class that is the weakest link. So you go out for an election, you have campaigned on the platform of a political party. The people have voted for you. In fact, we celebrated that election, especially in the National Assembly. So we're now going to see. In fact, I think it was in this studio. I said, let us see.
A mix.
Yeah, I said, let us see 2 years down the line what will happen. Exactly. What is happening?
Exactly.
I said it right here in this studio. If we're in the churches, they'll call us prophetess.
You've been proved right.
You understand what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, what are we saying? The law says, or we had a law that took us into a particular election. We sat down and said, these were the loopholes because of judgments, because of practice, because of this. Let us see how to do that. I am not an apostle of passing an electoral act close to the election. If, for instance, we had looked at this election after 2023 election, and by the end of 2024, we had done the reform and passed it, it means that for all of those off-cycle elections, by-elections, we would have been able to practice to see what is working and what is not working well going into the new election. Because what you have done is this. This is 2025, end of 2025. I'm looking at election in 2027, early 2027. But if this law passes, it means that there's going to be election in November, less than about a year into it. We have not practiced anything. And you have an electoral umpire that has been planning release electoral timetable 1 year ahead of time, has put all of these things in place, and suddenly you need to go back to the drawing table to do what you have to do. I tell you, if citizens are able to hold the political class accountable for all of these reforms that we're having, for instance, let me, before I forget, let me draw the Honorable's attention. When I mentioned the gender, I wasn't mentioning the reserve seat bill. in the Electoral Act, there's a provision for party primaries. It has nothing to do with the gender bill. This is in the Electoral Act provisions for 2025. That's the one that they're debating. That there should be at least 35% representation of women and youth for party primaries. The delegates. So every political party is supposed to be intentional about ensuring that your delegates for your party primary should be at least 35%, you know, women inclusion of women. And that's, you know, this is where it comes to bear. You have that in the law. But we don't know. Some women group will not even know. We should go to the political parties, use the FOI and say, can we have the list of your delegates when that law passes? And any political party that did not present at least 35% of women in their, you can actually go to court. You can actually ask for a redress. So for me, two things come out from what we are saying. It is important that we sit down and reflect and do an assessment of what we had done. It is when we have not done that assessment and we have not agreed within ourselves to say this thing. Because one thing we are saying here, this law, it's whether it passes at the National Assembly, the next hurdle is for the president to sign. We remember there was a law that passed and President Buhari didn't sign. And it didn't become law until we had the 2022 Electoral Act that was eventually passed. So that's another hurdle we have to think about. The National Assembly, they will do their own, citizens and civil society will do all our own and all of that. And then the law will pass. The next greatest hurdle is for the president to assent. And you know, the law doesn't become law, the bill doesn't become law until it is assented to by the president. So what we are supposed to do, for instance, is to have people, and I keep saying, sometimes, I don't know whether the political class, if they actually sit down to study this law, once a new law comes in, they put frameworks in place for the proper implementation of this law, rather than looking for loopholes. Rather than looking for loopholes. So every time I'm on the field, on ground, observing elections, you say you are running for a particular constituency, and in that constituency you have, let's say you have 30 polling units that covers your constituency, and you don't have party agents for those 30 polling units, you have 2 party agents, 2/30. And you expect other people to bring results from the remaining 28 polling units that you don't have. And then the whole idea of even having polling agents is that your polling agents are supposed to be your party members, so that at least the commitment to your party is there.
To protect your vote.
To protect your vote. But what do you see? You see a situation whereby there are 2 or 3 political parties that have party agents in all of these 30 polling units, and you see some others that don't have. What do you expect? These other political parties will look for a way to fill that loophole. And, you know, what I usually advise is this. So when you want to go to court, usually when election results are declared, because elections are won and lost at the polling unit, because that's where you have the first declaration of results. So if you are contesting election, and it is also prescribed in this new Electoral Act that is being, Electoral Bill. Do you understand? Who declares results where is the presiding officer. Now, you know that, like the Honorable was talking about NYC, now it is not just NYC that are doc staff. If we are putting our antenna on people that are working within the electoral value chain, we should also put our antenna on electoral officers. Electoral officers are mini INEC chairpersons in their local government areas. So most times when you have issues of logistics, money has been released, but you find an electoral officer who has not given that money. Electoral officer is a permanent staff of INEC. It's a permanent staff of INEC. So we need to also be able to interrogate that. But on the whole, the fact that this Electoral Act, if passed in December, there are some, like what the Honorable said, there are some provisions in this Electoral Bill, sorry, I keep calling it the Electoral Bill, that need constitutional amendment. And some of those constitutional amendments will have to go to the states, for the state assemblies to agree.
That was the reason why I asked
and
Mr.
you
Stanley
know,
that
that
question. Yes.
It has also to be passed by the 2 arms of the National Assembly, the Senate and the House of Reps, before you can even present it to the President for signature. So this is already October ending. November is here, December is here, and we're talking of election for November or February in 2027. At what time are we going to put those new structures in place? So for me, this electoral act would have been passed like 1 year, October 2024, so that we'll be able to do that. That's the only challenge.
Yes.
Okay,
exactly, yes. We have some messages that came in. We'll read them after the break, and we're expecting more from our viewers to contribute to this conversation. We'll take a break. When we return, our conversation will continue. Don't go away.
The Renewed Hope Initiative RHI presents the RHI Green Nigeria Challenge. Go green today for a greener tomorrow. This national competition is in 3 categories. The household category is a tree planting competition amongst 11 frontline states in northern Nigeria. Each participating household in Adamawa, Borno, Bauchi, Gombe, Jigawa, Kano, Katsina, Kebbi, Sokoto, Yobe, and Zamfara states will plant a minimum of 1 tree to qualify, with a video evidence of before and after the tree planting exercise. 20 million naira will be awarded to the best household. Submission deadline is 20th December 2026. Community category will see local governments, local communities, schools, and NGOs reclaim and transform degraded or abandoned areas such as dump sites, landfills, parks, and their likes into green, vibrant gardens, parks, and eco-friendly spaces. 50 million naira would be awarded to the overall best community group. Deadline for submission is 15th July 2026. States category will have all states of the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory, excluding Enugu State, have a chance to address the growing threats to environmental sustainability and cleanliness. States will be judged based on the number of trees planted on major roads and inner streets and how clean they are. 100 million naira will be awarded to the best performing state. Already, Enugu State has 100 million naira for being RHI's model green state due to its greenery and cleanliness. Video evidence must be submitted by participating states on or before 20th December 2026. All entries must be directed to RHI Office, State House, Abuja, or email rhi.greenchallenge@statehouse.gov.ng. RHI Green Nigeria Challenge. Go green today for a greener tomorrow.
Back, and you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria. We've been discussing the electoral bill presented to the Senate for ratification on some issues, and we still have our guest here seated in the studio. Honorable Shaba, I will come to you now to sort of address some of the issues that have been spoken about. We have some messages that came in. Let me read some of them that came in from, let me begin with the one from Kanu. Dalhatu Sani Yola from Kanu said, Electoral Act amendment, what strategies are proposed to protect electronic transmission of results? The propensity of hacking gives me serious concerns. That's Dr. Dalhatu Sani Yola from Kanu. And Etenk Philip for Emboy said, good morning, presenters, and to your guests. I think the proposed amendments are in order. Nigerian government are very good in lawmaking. The challenge is always in the implementation of the laws and guidelines. Moving general elections to November 2026 is not the issue, but conducting the elections in line with beautiful electoral guidelines without man-made glitches is the issue. And Chikedim from Wari Delta State said, the Electoral Act amendment is a welcome development, especially with a new INEC chairman, Prophet Joas Amipitang, in the place. No democracy can thrive if there is undue interference in electoral activities, hence compromising credible, free and fair elections. Challenges like vote buying, rigging, voter apathy need urgent tackling for Nigeria's nascent democracy to grow. We hope Professor Amupatang's strong track record enables him to address these issues, ensuring transparent, trustworthy elections in Nigeria. Honorable Shaba.
Thank you very much. Let me clarify one issue so that we don't live with that impression that I'm not opposed to the amendments. What I said is proposing amendments without a corresponding X-ray on the operators of the system will take us nowhere. The amendments are welcome, but we should also focus more on the operators of the system rather than the amendment. Having said that, I listened to Honorable Balogun's submission in the NYSC. With all due respect to him, there is nothing like, the NYSC is not involved in the conduct of elections. INEC is empowered to recruit ad hoc staff, be they professors, be they NYSC people, be they secondary school students, as the case may be, but all these persons are agents of a disclosed principle, which is INEC. And that is why you don't see anybody suing the NYSC as respondents in election petitions. So the NYSC is unknown to law as far as the conduct of elections are concerned. It is INEC, I mean, per se. And having said that, it also takes me back to the issue of the issue ably raised by Madam, as it has to do with defecting and defection. Maybe when you have voted on one political party. Let me ask, who has suffered any harm as a consequence of defecting since it started? I want us to tell me one person, one individual that has defected and has suffered as a consequence of that.
But there's a law.
There's a law. That's what we're talking about. Weak enforcement regime. The operators of the system, the presiding officers of the respective houses are supposed to give effect to those laws, but they choose not to do because they want to be politically correct always. That is the issue that I'm raising. It's not that it's not for want of laws. No, the laws are there. Unambiguous. If you defect, you lose your seat. Who has lost his seat as a consequence? In one of the states in the South, I mean, recently, some people defected. But just go to court and see the kind of legal gymnastics and rigmaroles that will come out of it. Things you are seeing.
They will defect and there will be celebration.
There will be celebration on television everywhere. They will address press conferences, and when you get to court, another result will come. Come on, what I'm saying here. So I think we need to wake up from this. This joke is embarrassing us everywhere.
Enforcement is key, that's what you're saying.
Enforcement is key, and enforcement has direct correlation with the operators of the system, the characters of the people who are operating it, the integrity of the people who are operating the system. That is where we should focus more on. And I'm glad that we have a change. I am very hopeful that Professor Ampiton is somebody I know, even if it's from a distance, and I think his credibility can come to bear on some of these things. I'm hopeful. I hope I'm able to carry this hope down the lane, I mean, in the course of all of this. But having said that, if we want a system that will work for us, we should all be ready to support the system, not just support it, support transparency, support a system that will bring about the desired change that Nigerians really desire and deserve. Because we can't continue to be going around in circles, this vicious circle. We need to break away from it. Let's for once get people who are truly committed to the system. And let me tell you, sirs, each time we talk, people talk about politicians, the political class and everything. What do you expect from the political class?
Political will.
Yeah, what do you expect from them? The politicians are mainly concerned about winning. Howsoever, they want to win. I'm more concerned about those who are supposed to rein in people who are violating the system in the course of trying to win. Because the law envisages that there will be infractions. The law envisages. Ask me, what's the qualification for being a politician? And you place so much hope on, with all due respect, the character of politicians. I'm one of them. No, hell no. Because we know that the law envisages that people would ordinarily try to overreach. That is why we have laws in place. If those laws are not enforced, people will cheat, particularly if they know they will get away with them. You're talking about changing in the dates of election. And why are we discussing that? Whether you have elections, whether litigations are concluded before swearing in and so forth. And why do you think people are discussing it? Let me give you an answer. The reason is simple. They believe that once you are inaugurated, you assume some powers that are capable of tinkering with ordinary process that should provide justice for all across the board. They believe that you have assumed authority and every other organ, agents of government they are now answerable to you. And that takes me to the issue of weak institutions. The U.S. is able to stand today, they're staggering, they're standing today because they have very strong institutions. If President Trump decides on this, hey, the next day the courts are striking them down. I want to see Nigerian courts do that. They have the powers.
That's what we call there is need for independence of the judiciary.
Strong judiciary, strong and every institution should be able. We have only succeeded in creating strong men, strong individuals, not institutions. So you have men who are more powerful than the institutions. That is not democracy.
That is not democracy.
Yeah, that is not democracy.
Thank you very much, Honorable Shaba Ibrahim. I have some question. I don't know whether Honorable Balogun is still with us.
Honorable Stanley is there.
Okay, Honorable Stanley, maybe. Okay, let me just read some of this question. Stanley, Barrister Stanley, so that he can respond to some of these. Then Faith will also respond to some of these questions that have come in from our viewers and their comments. This one is from Ahmed Baba Dikwa from Maiduguri. It says, minor amendments are introduced. The core reform needed is to escalate the conduct of local government elections to the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. This shift must be prioritized to ensure compliance, transparency, and true democratic representation at the grassroots level. Mohammed Awal Musa, a farmer from Kano, says enhancing electoral integrity and accountability, the practice of vote buying and the influence of wealthy individuals and parties can sway voters and compromise the integrity of elections. Then this is from Fane. Fane is from Makurdi, Benue State. He said, good morning. I sincerely appreciate the great work you are doing in keeping Nigerians informed. Please help ask the honorable member why we can't be patriotic enough to mandate INEC to go fully digital. If our banks can get digital systems right, why can't INEC? Let's be sincere with ourselves for the progress of this nation. Even with beavers, most at times INEC ignore it and go manual. Haba, in this age and time. And this is from Dr. Amos Jeff from Jalingo, Taraba State. He says, it is my candid opinion that introducing new laws towards the commencement of the election proper is not healthy for the election management body, that is INEC. This is because it does not give INEC the opportunity to study the law and have the proper understanding of the implementation and workability of any particular change that the law may introduce. The problem is not with the law, but the attitudes of the political class who have taken election to be a do-or-die posture. Election should not be political class, it should not be do-or-die affairs, just as it shouldn't be a matter of winner takes all. The political class are the real problem and not INEC. Attitudinal change amongst Nigerians is what we need to emphasize if we really want to witness a free, fair, and transparent electoral process in our democratic journey. And lastly, this one, it says, Electoral Act amendment can make no meaning without institutional reform that can hold the perpetrator accountable. That is from Linus. Linus is from Lagos.
Okay, before we go, let's finish taking the text messages. I have one from Paul Otumbadi from Imo State. He said, good morning, honorable discussant. I identify with Honorable Shaba's fears. No one person appointed by one person will give us a credible election, never. The amendment should suggest a committee of INEC leadership with equal powers submitted by the major parties involved in the election, therefore making it impossible for one of them to determine the outcome of the election. And Nwafuru Hyacinth from Bakilike said, any electoral amendment should focus most on providing highly deterrent penalties for the violation. Our problem is with the politicians. The implementation of the act should not know any sacred cow's place. And another one said the new electoral law should make it mandatory that INEC should declare the seat of any defecting member of the National Assembly vacant without waiting for the courts. Now let's go to Mr. Stanley, who is in Yenogwa. You've listened to some of the messages that came in from our viewers, and I believe you'll respond to some of them. But let's talk about something very important. How ready will INEC be in terms of logistic, funding, and technology to meet these new timelines that is being proposed in the electoral bill?
Let me quickly say that will be a difficult question for a non-INEC staff to answer, but notwithstanding, I will just go straight to say that their complaints have always been with regards to funding. And as such, once we have a system that guarantees the quick and expeditious release of funds by those in charge of the funds to INEC, we can now be able to define a framework that will call for accountability, that will ensure that, yes, since there is proof that these funds have been released, INEC doesn't have a choice in the matter other than to ensure that the complaint about logistics doesn't raise its head anymore. So that's just how that question should be addressed in my view. But ultimately, like I said, it is for those in charge of INEC to be prepared to give answers to the question.
Hello.
So some of the messages we sent.
Okay, well, we can bring it to the studio. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Stanley. As we begin to wind up our conversation, I know that Honorable Balogun is still with us. Maybe he can respond to some of the comments that have come in. And one more comment that has just come in is, it says, Electoral Act Amendment. What strategies are proposed to protect electronic transmission of results? The propensity of hacking gives me serious concerns. And that's from Dr. Dalhatu Sani Yola. It's from Kano. Honorable Balogun, maybe you want to respond to some of the comments that we have read out, and also to this question. Someone is saying that IPAC is proposing stripping the executive powers to appoint the INEC chairman. Is this going to be captured as part of amendments to be voted for, or merely advisory? And what is being proposed as an amendment?
Well, thank you. Well, I think experience is always the best teacher. While we are on this program, you know how many times we've been offline. And that shows that, look, we cannot legislate beyond our capacity. Hello?
Go ahead.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, please. We can hear you.
Okay. So that's what I'm saying. I said, while we are on this program, we have been offline for about at least 3 or 4 times. That shows we have to look at our laws, recognizing the capacity that we have. Someone said the banks have been running their online transaction efficiently. And I ask you, who pay for your money whenever you lose money through hacking? In Nigeria, because nobody pays. And that's why we continue to feel everything is okay. You get your money stolen, people hack into your account, and the bank will tell you to go and sort it out. Because most of these banks don't get to pay. And that's why they bring up some of these innovations that they don't really have control over. But the issue is, if within the time of collation, we just go offline like we've had about 2 or 3 times in this program. What do you think would have happened in Nigeria while collating is going on real time and you just go offline? So these are things that we know can happen. But my take is, well, INEC gives 1 year notice for any election, And I think a year notice is enough for people to prepare an election. And that's why all our amendments must be completed before the 1 year notice for INEC to give their notice. And disbursement of funds within the last 2 dispensations has actually improved drastically. And I think most of the areas they have problem with funding now is disbursements, especially when it comes to all these transport workers. The INEC want to transfer money to them. You know, they also have their small vendors that used to bring their vehicles. So they always rely on cash. But with the financial situation in Nigeria now, the laws does not allow you to carry large sum of money. So when you tell them, the INEC says they want to transfer money to them, then it becomes an issue. So they always have some disagreement along the terms of payment. I'm sure that does not happen when it comes to the printing of materials and all the logistics that got to do with payment that can be done through transfer. But the area of transportation is very key. Someone said something about the issue of NYC, that the INEC officials, the EOs, are also involved in the election. And they say they are never involved in the election at the end of the day. But the issue is the main election, the voting itself. No INEC staff is at the polling unit, and I'm happy that the lady in the studio also said that, agreed that elections are won at the units. So if you're able to conclude your election, have your agents, because that's one of the other area that we have that's also problematic. The agents that we have, most of them also compromise. They compromise during election. And sometimes, like she also said rightly, even some of them don't have agents. It's the powerful major parties that donate agents for them. And at the end of the day, if there is any offense, as long as there is connivance with your agents at the end of the day and they sign the result sheet, there's something you can prove in the court at the end of the day. So that's why we should look at the capacity of some of these political parties. If you say you are a political party and you cannot even provide agents at the unit, then what kind of political party are you? So we should also, but if INEC should remove any political party today, deregister any political party today, we'll talk about it.
Okay, Honorable, thank you so much. We really have just some few minutes to go, and Faith Nwadishi, as the debate continues at the National Assembly, one thing remains very clear. Actually, every reform to our electoral law must balance timeliness, transparency, trust, ensuring that democracy truly, works for the people. What expectations should people have from this? The bill, the proposal before the National Assembly. What are the or the electorate themselves? In just 30 seconds, please.
I would like that the National Assembly fast tracks this and keep those progressive provisions in the law, and also ensure that they are properly implemented. There's some positive things we've had in the last 10 years with the leadership of Professor Mahmoud Yakubu in INEC. We should look at protecting some of those things and how we can build on them and strengthen them. Because finally, to the electorate, citizens out there, if you don't protect our democracy will fail. When we talk about strong institutions are held because citizens hold those people that are in charge of those strong institutions accountable. If we continue to lay back and say, this is my person, my brother, my sister, we'll continue to destroy our democracy.
Okay, in 30 seconds, please, your final
What
shots.
lesson can Nigeria learn from other countries' electoral reform?
Well, let me say that I'll just be repeating myself if I have to answer this question, as particularly within the short time frame remaining. But one point must be made. It is on record that in this country, the only president that has assented to an amendment that led to his own ouster was Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, if we can recall, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
We still have a hurdle here, just like she pointed out. Should all these amendments, as beautiful as they may look, if Mr. President decides to withhold assent, let the National Assembly be prepared to overrule.
Okay, Honorable Shaba, okay, Honorable Shaba Ibrahim, former member, House of Representatives, thank you so much for coming on Good Morning Nigeria today. And we also have to thank Honorable Adebayo Balogu, Chairman, House Committee on Electoral Matters, You represent Ibiju Lekki Federal Constituency. Thank you so much. And my sister Faith Nwadishi, Executive Director, Center for Transparency Advocacy.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much
always.
for coming. And Barrister Stanley Damabidi, who joined us from Yenogwa. Thank you so much for your contribution. Gentlemen and ladies, we appreciate you. And that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. Join us again for another edition for tomorrow. I am Jumbo Yusuf.
Hamad Maladi, do have a lovely day.